I'm John Seaman at Road America Racetrack, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and I'm covering the Vintage Fall Festival, an annual showing of classic and historic racing cars from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. The Fall Festival is held October 1st and 2nd this year, and the featured marque will be the Mercedes Benz 300s.
This one was John Olson's Gullwing, and he had it for about 10 years before I bought it last winter. He took it to Monterey in '86 and came in second. And I guess this is his hometown track, so you guys probably know more about it than I do, but he did very well with it. The car went back to the Mercedes factory in '62 and had an alloy engine put in it, and was more or less set up with whatever the latest was that they had at the time. And then Gullwing Service Company did another restoration on it, a mechanical restoration, about 5 years ago for John Olson in order to prepare it for vintage racing. And I myself have never been here, so I had let the car show me the way around, because of course it knew the way from years gone by. I guess the appearance of a Gullwing in the eastern races that I'm used to is extremely rare. And I got to admit, it's kind of fun having my picture taken as being the guy who has the Gullwing, even if I come in second to last.
This is a 1958 Turner. The model is 950S. It was based on an A30 Austin sedan. There was probably 200 or 300 of this model built in England. Car was designed in the early 50s, and in 56 the designer and builder, a fellow named John Turner, came to America to import the cars, and somebody told him, you aren't going to sell a car in America without fins. So he went back home and put the stubby little fins on the back and named it the 950S. And this was a fairly successful car. In England it did very well in production racing. This car was built, I believe, from 57 through 1959. It was available with a variety of engines. They put Coventry Climax engines in it. They put the Ford Flathead 803, I believe it was, and the Sprayed engine in it. This car was found in a Wisconsin pasture, and of course it was not much left. I've restored it over 4 years, and basically now it's got later model Sprite disc brakes. It's got a regular Sprite engine in it, 67 Sprite transmission in it, and it seems to be running pretty good.
This is Steve Prewitt's 283 Corvette fuel injection. This is a very interesting and unique old Corvette and one of the very fastest of its type. It has the earliest form of fuel injection commercially offered in the United States. And as Corvettes go, the only thing more desirable than this is one of the factory racers.
This is a 1957 fuel injection Corvette. It's one of 51 airbox Corvettes made, which means that it's a race-prepared Corvette, and that's the first time in Chevrolet's history they did that. The airbox is this part right here, which brings air into the fuel injection, rams it into the fuel injection, and then also ducts air down into the quarters into large air scoops for the fin brakes on the car. This particular car was raced at, in Florida at Sebring, Daytona, on the East Coast, Lime Rock, and other tracks around the country. In its early years, more lately was restored to a concours car and was Bloomington Gold certified, meaning that every nut and bolt on the car is authentic and correct. At that point in time, we acquired the car and put it back on the racetrack as it was originally, and have tried to retain the integrity of the car completely. When we put the roll bar back in, we used original mounting holes. We didn't cut the bodywork in any way, and so the car is really completely original as it was raced. We have a scrapbook with the car that documents its entire history, including pit passes and photographs of when it raced in its early years. And out of the 51 cars, however many are remaining, this is the only one that is complete with its history and total documentation of the car.
I was in a Triumph TR3 in 1956, and I got to turn 14 in my Triumph, and I lost it. And I was afraid of turning over, although I did have a roll bar in. I was one of the first people to put a roll bar in a car like that. And I just dove and grabbed the passenger seat and held on. I sort of stuck my head up to look around where everybody was, and everybody had gone by. And there I was, dead last. And 1956. God, that's a long time ago, isn't it?
To some of us it is, yeah. You seem to have won here in a vast variety of cars from the great to the tiny.
Yes, I've been fortunate to have some good automobiles. I've won in Formula Juniors and AC Bristols, which they were really the forerunner to the Cobra, and Ferraris, Maseratis, Jaguars, Ferrari, did I say Ferrari? Lola, Lotus. The people who I drove for, just very fortunately for me, they had the best. Scarabs, I forgot the Scarab.
That is the best.
That's right.
Did you ever actually drive for Lance Reventlow?
Yes, I did. I drove Lance's car. It wasn't kind of planned that way, but I was at Nassau, and it rained, and he said, "I don't like the rain." And he said, "Why don't you drive it?" And I said, "Well, twist my arm." And he started reaching for it, but I was already in the car. And and let's see, I drove for Lance at Nassau, and one other time it was in California.
Yeah, it seems that the last time Ferrari won a major race here, you were driving.
With Walt Hanskin in John Meekham's 275 LM. And it was one of those cases where the car was just very reliable. In fact, we'd only bought it 2 weeks before. We'd been over in England racing at Brands Hatch. And John Meekham, who owned the team, said, "Hey guys, why don't we go over to Modena and see Mr. Ferrari and see the factory?" And we did. And Mr. Ferrari was showing John this 275 LM, and he's called us over, and he said, "Mr. Ferrari wants to know if you and Walt feel you could win the Road America 500 with this car." And Walt looked at me and he said, "Hey mate," he said, "I think we can do it. What do you think?" And I said, "I certainly see no reason why we couldn't." God, the car was just beautiful. And John bought it right then. I think it was all of $17,000, which was like $170,000 today, of course. And he put it on an airplane and flew it over, and we weren't the fastest, but geez, the Ferraris are so reliable. We lucked in.
How did you manage to win the big race here in the little Elva?
A lot of luck. Well, of course, Bill Wiestoff did most of the driving. I started in a Ferrari. I was driving a GTO Ferrari with Roger Penske. And what was that little egocentric's name? Ollie Schmidt. Ollie had the Elva Porsche, and that cheap bastard wouldn't let me run the car in practice. So it almost cost us the race, because when I got in the car, I had never even sat in the car. And here we're leading the race because of Bill Wiestoff's skill. And away I go, and I get down to corner 5, and it was the first Elva Porsche made, and they hadn't really strengthened the chassis enough, and the car kind of twisted and turned while you're on the brakes, and sort of steering here and there, and I looped it. Well, I didn't even know where the starter was. So I was sitting there, oh my God, in front of everybody, and I knew Ken Miles was catching as well. I found the starter, and we just tippy-toed our way to finish first. We were very fortunate.
Was Ken pleased?
Oh, I don't know about, I didn't ask him. He didn't wave at us.
Can we ask you to talk about this yellow car here?
No, I won't talk about it.
Okay.
No, I bought it sight unseen, and I've learned my lesson many years ago that you don't do that, but I did it again. And the reason I did it, the reason I bought the car was, my concept is, here you look at the people with their Ferraris, and you know what they're costing today, or what their value is. Aston Martins have taken off from where they were 4 or 5 years ago. Well, E-Type Jaguars have not. They're moving up, but I mean, if this car, if we can sort the car out, and then we do the body work and really put a nice paint job on it, and put some beautiful wheels on it, and if we have 25 or 30,000 in it, we'll have a lot. Well, you know what that is, a percentage of what the other guys will be worth, and that would give me a great deal of pleasure to be able to run with or even beat these cars costing.
14 to that. Afterburner, your oil stock is about 3.1. You did some help? Checking for clicks allowed right now. What's going on with this box sign? You want me to dispatch your car? Go ahead, Brad. You may turn their engines off.
once you get used to driving the thing, you got to hang on to the rear end of the car. You can feel it. It wants to come around on you.
What year is the car? What kind of history does it have?
Well, it's a 1956. The history is that it was actually in our family since about 1904, and just gets exercised on the streets and occasionally up here at Road America. It was owned by, I believe, the body mechanic at Lober in Chicago, who modified the front end, but basically took pretty good automobile care. And mechanics have always been great. The body is very solid, except the modification to the front headlights.
What kind of speed do you get here at Road America?
You can tap this car out on the straights and get it right up to 135, 140. But that's moving.
How long have you been running the car?
We started vintage racing it in 1980. And 2 races a year. So it's really not a campaigned car. And we're thinking about getting another race vehicle and using this really for parade laps.
Mercedes being the featured marque this year, are you going to be doing the racing, the featured Grand Prix race this afternoon?
My father's going to drive the Grand Prix, and I'm going to drive the car in competition. So we're sharing the driver's duties.
Observations after riding in the car is that it certainly is smooth.
It is. It's a very solid, tight automobile, and it's, you know, to have a street vehicle that you can put on a track like this with such, you know, ease is fantastic. The car really was a race-prepared street car, you know, for a real enthusiast.
And there are no special modifications to this car for racing?
No, this car is as the factory made the car.
What size engine is it and about how many horsepower?
It's a 3-liter engine, which puts it about 183 cubic inches. And the book horsepower says it's about 240, although the Gullwing Club and several restorers have only dynoed the engines to a maximum of about 210 horsepower.
It's very impressive performance for that size engine.
The car is made to do it. It's a lot of fun. That's what it's all about.
Afternoon. It's Sunday afternoon at Road America for the October Vintage Fest. We have with us Mr. Augie Pabst, Mr. Paul O'Shea, and Mr. John Fitch. Very well-known racers. We'll have a few minutes with them to hear from their exploits and trials of their racing days. Augie, would you like to take it away for us?
Well, I'll try. It's not in my contract, but I think what you should know is that John is the only American that drove for the Mercedes Benz team, the World Championship team. That was in 54 and 55, if I recall, John. In fact, John won the most difficult race, I believe, that is held anywhere in this world, and that was the Mille Miglia. He finished first in class driving almost a box stock 300SL coupe, and finished 5th overall, which has to be a feat that I can't believe anybody else could do. Maybe Sterling Moss could have been a second to him, but not ahead of him. And John has driven for just about every major team of the day. He drove for the Cunningham team for a number of years, and has been successful in everything that he's driven, from the small cars on up to the most powerful. And Paul was 3-time national champion driving for Mercedes in a 300SL Gullwing and a 300SL coupe. He claims that he had a small advantage weight-wise. I think you said the coupe weighed something like 1,600 pounds.
The open car weighed 1,600 pounds.
Right.
Yeah. Extremely light.
And it's just a pleasure to be sitting here with them. Paul, I know maybe it's my turn to give it to you.
All right, I'll be happy to do that.
In fact, you're in the middle. It's going to be easier that way.
Well, yeah, probably I should hold this thing. John and I have been friends way back to 1950, I believe, or even 49. Now that I think about it, John. And John, as Augie said, was tremendously successful in Europe on the Mercedes team. I had the fortune to be the Mercedes team in the United States, and I had the very good fortune to be the only driver on the Mercedes team in the United States, so therefore they couldn't compare me to anybody. But way back when, and that was 1955, and I was telling this story the other night at a banquet, I had driven for Porsche at Sebring, Florida, and I had driven the only Porsche Spyder that existed at that time. And we did very well. We beat Colin Chapman in the Lotus, and a guy from Holland by the name of Fritz Koster drove with me. And I went back to the hotel, and Harder Hall, and there was a knock on my door. And I opened the door, and there's 2 gentlemen in 5-button coats, so you know automatically the suits are made in Germany. And they said, "Wie geht's denn? Kommen Sie hinter?" I said, "Oh, fine, fine, fine." And what they wanted to know is, would I drive for Mercedes Benz, and would I join their team? And they were planned on racing in the United States. And of course, that's a dream come true. And we worked out the financial details and the other details, and consequently I spent 3 great years with Mercedes here in this country. Although I would go to Germany, and we would run tests and things in Germany. But it was a delightful time of my life. I did other things beside that. I would also be on loan to Ferrari, and I would drive with Ferrari. And then John and I both, in 1956, I think it was, John, when you had the Corvette, they had a couple experimental Corvettes, one of them being the SS, which was extremely fast, but very short-lived, I must say, and the other one being as long as Augie's motorhome here. And Peter Lovely and I drove that, and we did quite well in it until I stuck it through a sandbank, and then we got it running again. And I've forgotten where we finished, but pretty well up there in very good order. But let me tell you first about my pal here on my left, Mr. Pabst. I had retired from racing because I'd gone with Studebaker Packard as sports car director. And what I was to do there was to design and build, or have the prototype department build me a sports car, and then they were going to make some more and market it. Well, that program came to an end when there was an agreement between the manufacturers of automobiles in Detroit and the government in Washington that they would downplay high performance, so that was the end of that. that also was one of the things that killed John's program on the SS, I believe.
Yeah.
But I had in my contract with Studebaker, I couldn't race. So when I was finished with Studebaker, I went back, drove some races. As a matter of fact, I drove here in a Aston Martin, a factory Aston Martin, that didn't fit me at all because George Constantine, who I was his co-driver, was about 3 times bigger than I am. And I was kind of slipping and sliding around inside the car. But then another time I drove, I got a call from a gentleman we all know by the name of Bill France, who was the father of NASCAR. And he was going to put on a 12-hour race in Daytona Beach. He wanted me to come down and drive it. So we did some dickering. I agreed that I'd go down and drive. And I said, but I'm going to bring a co-driver with me. He had somebody lined up for me. I've forgotten who it was. One of the NASCAR guys. And I said, no, if I'm coming, I'm bringing my own co-driver with me. And he said, well, who's that? He said, Augie Pabst. He says, I never heard of him. I said, well, you will. Don't worry about it. But we'll be there. And the car, as you remember, Aug, was a D Jaguar that belonged to old Jack Rutherford that he ran on the salt flats. And they pulled the car out of the museum is where it came from. And we jumped in, and we actually won the race. We got snookered out of a lap, if you recall. So we came in second, promptly took the prize money, which was quite a bit at that time, for that time, and went to Miami and blew it all and had a great time. John, of course, John was one of my heroes. And John and I became very good friends, and he helped me a lot in the racing career from the point of, I got a car from him, which was called the Fitch B, as John called it, and when I got it, it became the Fitch Bitch. So John figured very proud of me and getting me rolling down the road, and I certainly appreciate it, and we've been pals ever since. But these are two of my pals and two of my best pals, and I love being here with them, and it's great to be here at Road America. John, let me hand this over to you.
Thank you, Paul. I don't have the gift of gab. These Irish, you know, they got it. And Augie doesn't do very badly either. I'm looking at 1 year of Augie's race record, 1960. In that year, this is just one of them, he entered 7 SCCA Nationals in the Meister Browser Scarab, 1 class each time, 5 firsts, 1 second, and 1 fourth. Must have had 2 flat tires in the fourth, that's all I can say. Co-drove 2nd place Nart Ferrari in RA 500, Road America, set lap records at 8 circuits, all national race sites. 1 season. Overall first in 18 other events. West Coast International Series, 2nd at Laguna Seca, 3rd at Riverside, 7th at Le Mans in the factory for Ferrari. And he raced in 9 different makes in 1 year. So that's a small glimpse into his career. Now as for O'Shazel, which is his local name, really there's too many races to even get on a lot of pieces of paper. He's had a great career, and he's a great old pal, as Augie is, and I'm just so glad that this vintage era is revived, because it gives us antiques a chance to get in the...
It's not only vintage cars, is it?
Yeah. Thank you. Over and out.
Well, I really don't have much else to add, except I had forgotten how gorgeous this racetrack is. And John Fitch said it this morning when we were out in the pace car going around, and he looked over at me and he said, you know, this is the country club of racetracks. And I think that probably says it all, because it is the neatest place. And I look forward to coming back. I certainly look forward to coming here this time. And I hope they'll invite us back, John.
I hope.
Well, we'll play our cards right. We'll see what happens. Okay. Let me turn this off back to Aug, who opened up this event, and we'll
go from there?
Well, I believe that they're about to hold another race, and if you notice that ratty Jaguar sitting behind John and Paul, I'm supposed to be getting in it and see whether I can make it last for what I think it's an endurance race for 8 laps.
8-lap endurance race.
But it's always wonderful to be here, and I was just standing out there a little while ago looking at the trees and the colors, and it's well, the colors will be gone in a day or two. We're just fortunate. I think everything turned out just beautiful. The weather yesterday left a lot to be desired, and today's made up for it all.
Absolutely.
So thank you for asking us to be here.
My name's Rollie Stephenson. I've been racing vintage races at Road America here almost ever since they started with Joe Marchetti, probably 6-7 years ago. And I've been racing this car since about 1970. When I bought it, it had about 11,000 miles on it. I raced in SCCA, and now I race in historic racing. Of the last 21 races we've run with this, including the Bahamas in 1984, we've won 18 out of 21 and took 2 second places and 1 third, but I don't really like to think about that. And we also, in the Bahamas, ran against the Grand Sport Corvettes, which was a lot of fun, and took second overall in the class between the 2 of them. And we were able to also put away a pretty well-known driver from England who was leading the series in the historic races on another Cobra, so that made us feel pretty good. Bob Bondurant also ran this car a few times, and we both had a lot of fun with it over the years, and it's getting at that point right now that with the value getting up there that you start to think about other things in life. Its car weighs a little over 1,900 pounds and probably has around 430 horsepower, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's original Cobra. It's 289 cubic inch. There's no 302 stuff on it or any of this other stuff that a lot of guys have put on their engines. And for some reason, the little car seems to just get around the tracks. It's a little faster than the other ones. And so we've been pretty pleased with it. But it's got 66,000 miles on it now, and almost 50 of that have been competition. So it's getting a little tired. Thank you.
Shelton. I live in Burlington, Wisconsin. I've been racing since about 1962, mainly in the Midwestern Council of Sports Car Clubs, and racing a variety of equipment starting from bug-eyed sprites on up through modifieds, small modifieds, and then larger modifieds. And a natural outlet for old-timers that have been racing that is to get into vintage racing, and that's what I did. Starting out racing an MGA a little bit ago, and then I was presented this car, which is a 1950 Crosley Hot-Shot. And the Crosley is a car that was produced in the United States up until 1952. The person who started the company was Mr. Crosley, who made airplanes and refrigerators and all sorts of things, but in his last days as an entrepreneur, he decided to get into the car business. He made small station wagons and sedans, versions of this car, and then later on he decided that he wanted to make a small, affordable sports car. And that's what it is. It was a very inexpensive car. It was a little over $900 brand new, and it had very unique manufacturing techniques. In fact, it's hard for you to see, but the front and rear fenders on this car are actually out of the same fender die, the same metal die. The engine was designed really for the military and was made in 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder versions, but mainly the 4-cylinder version, which survived into this car. The original engine was a brazed sheet metal engine, and of course they had problems with leaks and all sorts of other things, but it was very light. And the basic design, overhead cam and small displacement, 750 cc's, which this one is, was carried over. They later on went to a cast iron block, and it has some unique features that there is no cylinder head gasket. The cylinder head is cast along with the cylinder bores, so you can never have cylinder head gasket problems, which is good because you can have overheating problems, and that can result in cylinder head failures. Car is about the same as a bug-eyed Sprite as far as handling and original performance goes. But because it is older, it was 10 years ahead of the bug-eyed Sprite, but it is essentially exactly the same car. When they made the bug-eye, they copied this car. But this one is a little bit lighter, and of course has smaller displacement, but it has the overhead cam, which kind of makes up for it. It's a lot of fun to drive. I enjoy the car, and it gets a lot of interest. People are just really interested in this thing, although sometimes I wonder why. But I have enjoyed it, and I continue to have fun with it, and we'll try to continue to have fun with it.
John Mays, Jack around here. I'm from Chicago. Okay, this is a Cooper Mk7, 1953. It's a long chassis model, which is 3 inches longer, has a twin Jap, that's J.A. Prestwich, 1100 cc engine. It burns methanol, 15-to-1 compression ratio. Uses castor oil because that goes in a solution with the methanol. About 95 horsepower. Long stroke engine with a lot of torque, Norton gearbox, 4 speeds, no reverse. The car has chain drive, independent 4-wheel suspension, basically a Fiat Topolino layout that they cut 2 of them in half and joined them so that you had independent front and rear. The car weighs about 625 to 635 pounds. And as I said, has 95 horsepower, so the acceleration is very good. This particular car spent all of its life until the last 2 years in South Africa. It had 4 different owners there and was raced competitively in the South African races, and I brought it back here about 2 years ago. It's completely restored and continually brakes. The horsepower is pretty much with a small car. Everything has to be safety wired. Parts shake off regularly. We changed the gearbox yesterday in about an hour. We have 4 spare engines because they're always braking. You're lucky if you get through a weekend without a breakage.